If you've spent your entire life absorbing everyone's pain, regulating everyone's emotions, and carrying weight that was never yours to carry, and you recently felt something shift inside you that you can't quite name, then what I'm about to tell you will explain why everyone suddenly says, "You've changed for the worse." You haven't changed for the worse. You've stopped participating in a system that required your self-destruction to function. And Jung would tell you, this moment, this intolerance for old patterns that burns in your chest, isn't a breakdown. It's what he called the emergence of the true self, the moment when your psyche finally refuses to continue betraying who you actually are. But here's what no one prepared you for. Here's what every book about empaths conveniently leaves out. When you stop absorbing everyone's dysfunction, when you stop managing everyone's emotions, when you finally enforce the boundaries you should have had years ago, the people who benefited from your self-sacrifice will call you cruel, cold, selfish, and damaged. Your mother who always demanded you accommodate her mood swings? She's telling everyone you're disrespectful now. Your friend who only called when they needed something? They're saying you've become a bad friend. Your partner who took your loyalty for granted? They're claiming you're mean for finally enforcing basic boundaries. And if you're anything like the empaths Jung worked with, you're wondering, am I the problem? Have I actually become cruel? Did my healing turn me into the narcissist I was trying to escape? No. But you are standing at the most dangerous threshold Jung ever documented, a threshold where empaths either integrate their power and become whole, or inflate around their newfound boundaries and become exactly what they once despised. In 1935, Jung worked with a woman, let's call her Eleanor, who came to him exhausted, depleted, unable to function. She'd spent 30 years being the family mediator, the workplace therapist, the friend everyone leaned on. She absorbed everyone's pain without question because she thought that's what good people do. Then something shifted. She couldn't do it anymore. Her body refused. Her psyche withdrew all energy from relationships that had been draining her for decades. And when she finally set boundaries, when she finally said no to emotional labor she'd provided for free for 30 years, her family called her selfish. Her friends said she'd changed. Her husband threatened to leave because she was no longer the woman he married. Jung told her something that changed everything. You have not become cruel. You have become honest. And honesty is the most threatening thing you can offer people who've built their entire lives on your willingness to lie for them. But then Jung warned her about something she didn't expect, something that would determine whether this transformation led to freedom or to a different kind of prison. He said, "The empath who integrates shadow doesn't just gain the ability to set boundaries. They gain the ability to destroy. And most empaths, once they discover this power, use it to become the very thing that wounded them." Elena didn't believe him. She thought, I would never become like them. I know what it feels like to be hurt. 6 months later, she came back to Jung in tears. She'd become exactly what he warned about. She was using her intimate knowledge of people's vulnerabilities to punish anyone who upset her. She was weaponizing boundaries. She was calling judgment discernment. She was using, "I'm just being honest," to justify cruelty. She'd transformed from the victim to the predator. And she didn't even realize it was happening until she'd destroyed every relationship in her life. This is the pattern Jung documented in empath after empath who reached this threshold. They discover their power, they set boundaries, they enforce consequences, and then, so gradually they don't notice, they cross from self-protection into vengeance, from honesty into cruelty, from boundaries into weapons. The question isn't whether you're at this threshold. If you're watching this, you're already here. The question is, which version of yourself will emerge on the other side? Because Jung was clear, there are two paths from this moment. One leads to integrated power, the ability to protect yourself fiercely while maintaining your humanity. The other leads to what Jung called shadow inflation, becoming a predator who justifies cruelty with spiritual language. And most empaths take the second path without realizing it. In the next 16 minutes, I'm going to show you what Jung discovered about this transformation. The real gifts of empathic perception, not the romanticized version, but the actual psychological intelligence you've developed. The moment when protection becomes revenge, and the critical difference between integrated power and the dark turn that destroys most empaths who reach this stage. Because you didn't survive everything you survived just to become another version of what hurt you. Let's start with what Jung actually understood about empaths, because it's nothing like what you've been told. Jung never used the word empath. He called it highly differentiated feeling function, the ability to perceive and process emotional information at speeds and depths that most people never access. This isn't mysticism. This isn't energy. This is neurobiology. Your nervous system processes microsignals that other people's nervous systems filter out as irrelevant noise. Pupil dilation that indicates arousal or fear. Breathing patterns that reveal stress. Micro-expressions that flash across someone's face for milliseconds before they consciously control their features. Voice tone variations, postural shifts, the tiny incongruencies between what someone says and what their body reveals. Most people process this information slowly and consciously. They need time to think about whether someone seems trustworthy. They need repeated interactions to form opinions. You process all of this instantly and unconsciously. That's why you know someone is lying before they finish their sentence. That's why you feel the tension in a room before anyone else notices. That's why you can predict how someone will react before they know themselves. Jung recognized this as intelligence, not just sensitivity. When you say, "I have a gut feeling about someone," what you're actually experiencing is your unconscious mind processing massive amounts of data and delivering a conclusion. Your intuition is your brain's pattern recognition system, identifying familiar psychological signatures from your database of human behavior. And here's what makes this both extraordinary and dangerous. You've been building this database your entire life. Every person who hurt you, every narcissist who exploited you, every family member who used you. You weren't just absorbing their pain. Your brain was cataloging their patterns with the precision of a supercomputer. You know their triggers better than they do. You understand their insecurities at depths they've never acknowledged. You've mapped their fears, their desires, their manipulations, their vulnerabilities. You know exactly what to say to comfort them. You also know exactly what to say to destroy them completely. Jung called this the psychological war room, the arsenal of intimate knowledge you've accumulated through years of emotional labor. And something recently changed. Something pushed you past your breaking point. That's when you finally opened the war room and looked at all the data you've been collecting. That's when you realized you're not powerless. You never were. You were just choosing not to use what you know. But here's where Jung's warning becomes critical. Having a war room doesn't make you a warrior. It makes you dangerous. And there's a massive difference between dangerous and wise. Elena, Jung's patient, had this exact realization. She'd spent 30 years absorbing her husband's rage, her mother's narcissism, her friend's exploitation, and she had intimate knowledge of exactly how to hurt each of them. One day, her husband criticized her cooking. A small thing, but something in her snapped. She said, "At least I'm not like your mother, who you're still trying to prove yourself to at 50 years old. No wonder you married someone you could control. You never felt good enough for anyone who'd challenge you." It was true. Every word. She'd watched him struggle with this wound for decades. She knew exactly where to strike. Her husband left the room in tears, and Eleanor felt powerful. For the first time in 30 years, she wasn't the one crying. She wasn't the one absorbing pain. She'd given it back. Jung asked her, "How did you feel after?" She said, "Powerful, like I finally have teeth." Jung said, "You don't have teeth, you have venom, and you just proved you're willing to use it." That's the moment Elena understood what was happening. She wasn't setting boundaries. She was punishing people for years of accumulated resentment. She was using her intimate knowledge as a weapon, not as protection. This is the trap, and you need to understand it before we go further. Jung documented two distinct paths empaths take once they access their power. The integrated empath develops what Jung called the sword in the sheath. You have the capacity to destroy someone psychologically. You know their vulnerabilities. You understand their wounds. You could dismantle them with surgical precision. But you keep the sword sheathed unless absolutely necessary for self-defense. This is restraint backed by actual power, not weakness pretending to be kindness, not people-pleasing disguised as compassion. Real strength that chooses not to destroy because destruction isn't the point, boundaries are the point. The integrated empath sets boundaries without needing to explain why. No is a complete sentence. No justification required. No guilt attached. Enforces consequences without cruelty. When someone crosses a line, you don't need to wound them. You simply remove access. You withdraw your presence, your energy, your emotional labor. The consequence is natural, not punitive, speaks truth without weaponizing it. You can tell someone hard truths without trying to hurt them. This behavior isn't acceptable, doesn't need to become, "You're exactly like your abusive father and everyone sees it." Chooses battles consciously. Not every manipulation requires a confrontation. Not every slight demands a response. You have the discernment to know when to engage and when to simply walk away. Maintains compassion for people's unconsciousness while refusing to be destroyed by it. You understand that most people are operating from wounds they haven't healed. That understanding doesn't mean you sacrifice yourself to fix them. It means you hold boundaries with clarity, not contempt. This is the path of the warrior, not the victim or the predator. But most empaths don't take this path. Most take what Jung called the path of shadow inflation, where you discover your power and immediately misuse it. The inflated empath uses boundaries as punishment. Every boundary becomes an opportunity to make someone feel small. "I have to protect my energy from people like you," said with contempt, not neutrality. Weaponizes honesty. "I'm just being honest," becomes the justification for cruelty. You're not speaking truth to help. You're speaking truth to wound. Judges everyone's unconsciousness from a place of superiority. You've done the work, so everyone else is asleep. You see their patterns, so they're low vibrational. You've set boundaries, so they're toxic. Confuses discernment with judgment. Every person who doesn't meet your standards is energy draining. Every relationship that requires effort is not aligned. You've created a worldview where everyone is the problem except you. Uses psychological knowledge as a weapon. You know exactly what to say to hurt someone based on the intimate information they trusted you with, and you use it when they upset you. The inflated empath sounds like this: "I can't be around low vibrational people anymore. My energy is too precious. I'm just going to be honest here, even if it hurts, because that's what real growth looks like. They're triggered by my boundaries because they can't handle someone who knows their worth. I see through everyone's masks now. Nobody is actually authentic." Notice the pattern? Every statement positions you as superior. Everyone else is unconscious, low vibrational, triggered, inauthentic. But you're awake, you're healed, you're boundaried, you're honest. This is inflation, and it's the most common outcome when empaths access their power without wisdom. Jung saw this pattern so frequently he wrote, "The empath's greatest danger is not remaining too soft, it's becoming too hard. They swing from doormat to destroyer without ever finding the middle path of integrated strength." Elena did this for 6 months before she realized what was happening. She'd set boundaries with her mother, necessary boundaries, but she delivered them with contempt. She made sure her mother understood not just that the behavior needed to stop, but that Elena saw her as pathetic, damaged, a failed mother. She told her friend the truth about why the friendship wasn't working, also necessary, but she'd done it in a way designed to maximize pain. She wanted her friend to hurt the way she'd hurt for years. She'd enforced consequences with her husband, absolutely needed. But she'd done it with judgment, with superiority, with the unspoken message, "I'm better than you now that I've done my healing." Jung asked her, "Do you feel more whole, or do you feel more righteous?" She couldn't answer, because the truth was, she felt righteous. She felt superior. She felt powerful in a way that required other people to be small. That's how you know you're inflated rather than integrated. Integration feels like peace, like finally coming home to yourself. Inflation feels like power, like finally getting to be the one in control. If enforcing your boundaries gives you a rush of superiority, you're inflated. If speaking your truth feels like revenge, you're inflated. If watching someone struggle with consequences makes you feel vindicated rather than neutral, you're inflated. This is the critical distinction, and most empaths miss it entirely. Now we need to talk about the trap that destroys even empaths who avoid inflation. When you can see everything, every manipulation, every hidden agenda, every unspoken resentment, every mask people wear, how do you relate to anyone authentically? Jung called this the curse of superior perception. You're in a room full of people. Your nervous system is processing hundreds of microsignals simultaneously. You know, that person is lying about being happy in their marriage. That friend is jealous of your success, but pretending to celebrate your colleague is taking credit for your work while smiling at you. Your family member is manipulating the narrative to make you look bad. You see all of it, constantly, with perfect clarity. So what do? Most empaths at this stage make one of two choices, both of which lead to profound isolation. Choice 1. Withdraw completely. You decide that if everyone is unconscious, manipulative, or operating from wounds, then connection isn't worth the effort. You retreat into solitude. You convince yourself that being alone is safer than engaging with a world full of people who can't see what you see. You start thinking, "I'm the only conscious person in a room full of sleepwalkers. Why would I waste my energy trying to connect?" This sounds like wisdom. It's actually isolation disguised as discernment. Jung warned, the individuated person doesn't remove themselves from society. They engage with society consciously while maintaining their integrity. Withdrawal isn't integration, it's just another form of imbalance. Choice 2. Constant confrontation. You decide that if you can see everyone's unconscious patterns, it's your responsibility to point them out. You become the person who calls out every manipulation, who speaks truth in every interaction, who refuses to let anything slide because you're committed to authenticity. This sounds like integrity. It's actually exhausting arrogance. Not every unconscious pattern requires confrontation. Not every manipulation needs to be named. Not every wound needs to be exposed. Sometimes the most conscious choice is to simply let it be, to see clearly and choose not to engage, to understand someone's pattern without needing to fix it or fight it. Jung's patient Elena fell into the second trap. Once she started seeing clearly, she couldn't stop herself from pointing out everyone's patterns. Her sister made a passive-aggressive comment at dinner. Elena immediately said, "That's your childhood wound talking. You're still trying to compete for Mum's attention and using me as the target." Her colleague took credit for her idea in a meeting. Eleanor confronted her afterward. "I understand you feel inadequate in your role, but stealing others' work to compensate for your insecurity isn't the solution." Her husband forgot to do something he said he would. Elena responded, "This is your pattern of avoiding responsibility that you learned from watching your father abandon his family." Every observation was accurate. Every statement was true. But Jung asked her, "Are you speaking truth to help? Or are you speaking truth to prove you can see?" Elena realized she wasn't trying to help anyone. She was trying to demonstrate her superior perception. She was wielding her insight like a weapon to maintain a sense of control and power. Jung told her, "Superior perception without wisdom creates what I call psychological violence. You're not attacking with your fists. You're attacking with your vision. You're using your ability to see as a way to dominate, to control, to prove you're more conscious than everyone around you." This is the empath's final trap. using your gift to separate yourself from humanity rather than to engage with humanity from a place of integrated wholeness. So what does the integrated empath actually look like in practice? Let me be extremely clear about something that confuses most people. The integrated empath is not nice, they are kind. And there's a massive difference between these two qualities that most people don't understand. Nice people avoid conflict to keep peace at any cost, accommodate dysfunction to avoid making waves, smile while absorbing abuse because they don't want to seem difficult, need everyone to like them, sacrifice their truth to maintain harmony. Kind people engage conflict when necessary to maintain integrity, refuse to enable dysfunction even when it costs relationships, set boundaries without guilt because self-respect isn't negotiable, need to respect themselves when they look in the mirror, speak truth even when it disrupts harmony because false peace isn't peace. The integrated empath has stopped being nice, but they haven't become cruel. They've become kind with enforced boundaries. Here's what that actually looks like. 1. You trust your perception without explanation. When someone feels off, you don't override that instinct with logical justifications. You don't give 3 more chances to confirm what you already know. You simply trust what you perceive and act accordingly. But, and this is critical, you don't need to tell them why. You don't say, "I'm removing you from my life because I can see your narcissistic patterns and your inability to take accountability." You simply say, "This isn't working for me anymore," and then you leave. No explanation required, no psychological dissertation, no need to prove you see clearly. 2. You enforce boundaries without cruelty. When someone crosses a line, you don't engage in lengthy discussions about why it bothered you. You don't need to wound them to prove you have standards. You simply enforce the consequence and move forward. I asked you not to do that. You did it anyway. I'm not available for this relationship anymore. That's it. No character assassination, no listing of their flaws, no psychological analysis of their wounds. Just boundary stated, boundary crossed, consequence enforced. 3. You choose your energy investments with discernment, not judgment. Not everyone deserves your emotional labor. This is true. But the integrated empath doesn't make this decision from a place of superiority. You're not thinking, "They're too low vibrational for my energy." You're thinking, "I have limited emotional resources. I'm going to invest them in relationships that are reciprocal, respectful, and genuine." See the difference? One positions you as superior, the other positions you as boundaried. 4. You speak truth without weaponizing. It's sometimes you need to tell someone a hard truth. The integrated empath can do this without trying to wound. "This behavior isn't acceptable to me," doesn't need to become, "You're exactly like every other narcissist I've encountered," completely incapable of accountability. You can be honest without being cruel. You can enforce boundaries without attacking character. You can protect yourself without destroying others. 5. You maintain compassion while refusing to be destroyed. This is the hardest part, the part that separates integration from inflation. You can see someone's wounds, understand why they behave the way they do, have compassion for their journey, and still refuse to be destroyed by them. Compassion doesn't mean tolerance for abuse. Understanding doesn't mean acceptance of mistreatment. Empathy doesn't mean sacrificing yourself. The integrated empath holds both truths simultaneously. I see why you are the way you are, and I still won't allow this behavior in my life. No contempt, no judgment, just clarity and boundaries. Jung told Elena, "The goal isn't to stop feeling for people. The goal is to feel for people without losing yourself in the process, to see their wounds without making those wounds your responsibility, to have compassion without being consumed." Jung developed a simple diagnostic to help empaths determine which path they're on. Ask yourself these questions honestly. Question 1. When you enforce boundaries, do you feel peace or power? Integration feels like coming home to yourself, like finally honoring your truth. There's relief, there's clarity, but there's no rush of superiority. Inflation feels like power over someone else, like you're finally the one in control. There's a rush of vindication, a sense of, now they'll see. If enforcing boundaries feels like winning, you're inflated. If it feels like self-preservation, you're integrating. Question 2. Do you need people to know why you've set the boundary? The integrated empath doesn't need to explain their discernment. They don't need people to understand or validate their boundaries. The inflated empath needs everyone to know exactly why they're being removed. They write long messages detailing all the ways the person failed. They need the person to understand their flaws. If you can't set a boundary without explaining all the psychological reasons behind it, you're inflated. If you can simply state, "This doesn't work for me," and walk away, you're integrating. Question 3. Do you feel superior to people who haven't done the work? The integrated empath recognizes that everyone is on their own timeline. They don't judge people for being where they are. The inflated empath looks down on unconscious people. They use terms like low vibrational, asleep, unhealed, with contempt rather than compassion. If you find yourself thinking, "I can't be around people who haven't done their shadow work," you're inflated. If you think everyone's on their own journey and I get to choose who I walk with, you're integrating. Question 4. When you speak hard truths, are you trying to help or trying to wound? The integrated empath speaks truth to create clarity, not to create pain. The inflated empath speaks truth to prove they can see, to demonstrate their superior perception, to make someone feel small. Before you say something honest, ask yourself, am I saying this to help them understand? Or am I saying this to make them hurt? If you're honest, you'll know the answer. Question 5. Do you use your knowledge of someone's wounds to hurt them when they upset you? This is the final test, the one that reveals everything. The integrated empath has intimate knowledge of people's vulnerabilities. They could weaponize this information. They choose not to. The inflated empath uses this knowledge the moment they feel threatened, angry, or disrespected. Someone upsets you. Do you A. Set a boundary or remove yourself from the situation? B. Strike at their deepest wound using what you know about them? If it's B, even occasionally, you're inflated. And you need to recognize it before you destroy everyone around you. Jung told Elena, "You think your cruelty is justified because you were hurt first. But revenge is never integration. Punishment is never healing. Using your power to wound others doesn't make you strong. It makes you no different than the people who wounded you." That was the moment Elena broke down, because she realized she'd become exactly what she spent years healing from. She'd turned into a different version of her narcissistic mother, someone who used intimate knowledge to control and hurt others. The difference between predator and protector isn't the capacity for harm, it's the choice about when and how to use that capacity. If you've recognized yourself in the inflation patterns, this is your moment of choice. You can continue down the path of superiority, judgment, and isolation. You can keep using your perception as a weapon. You can maintain your identity as the only conscious one while everyone else is asleep. Or you can choose integration. Integration requires something most empaths resist: humility. You have to acknowledge that seeing clearly doesn't make you superior. It makes you responsible. Every piece of information you have about someone's vulnerabilities is a test of your integrity. Will you use it to help or harm? Will you weaponize wounds or hold space for healing? Here's what integration actually requires. 1. Acknowledge your own wounds. You're not healed. You're healing. There's a massive difference. The moment you think you're done with inner work, you've become inflated. Growth doesn't end. Shadow work is lifelong. Stay humble about your own process. You're still unconscious in countless ways you can't yet see. 2. Use your perception to protect, not to punish. When you see someone's manipulation, you don't need to expose it. You just need to not fall for it. When you detect someone's wound, you don't need to point it out. You just need to not let it become your responsibility. Your perception is for self-protection, not for control of others. 3. Choose kindness. When you have the power to choose cruelty. This is the mark of true strength. Anyone can be kind when they're powerless. Real kindness is choosing restraint when you have the capacity to destroy. You know where to strike to cause maximum damage. You simply choose not to because destruction isn't the point. Your own integrity is the point. 4. Maintain connection to your humanity. Don't let your superior perception separate you from human connection. Yes, everyone has wounds. Yes, everyone operates from unconscious patterns. Yes, you can see things others can't. That doesn't mean you're alone. It means you have a responsibility to engage consciously while maintaining your boundaries. 5. Remember, you were them. Once before you did the work, before you set boundaries, before you integrated shadow, you were unconscious too. You manipulated, you avoided accountability, you operated from wounds, you hurt people without meaning to. The only difference between you and the people you're judging is that you've done some work they haven't done yet. That's not superiority, that's just timing. So here's where we are. You've reached the threshold Jung documented. You've accessed your power. You can see clearly. You have the capacity to protect yourself fiercely. Now you get to choose. Will you use this power with wisdom? Or will you use it with cruelty disguised as boundaries? Because make no mistake, the inflated empath is just as destructive as the narcissist. Maybe more so because they use spiritual language to justify their behavior. I'm just protecting my energy becomes code for I can be as cruel as I want and call it boundaries. I'm speaking my truth becomes permission to wound without accountability. I'm honoring my intuition becomes justification for judging everyone as beneath you. This is not integration. This is just a different flavor of dysfunction. Jung was clear. The goal of individuation, of becoming whole, is not to remove yourself from humanity. It's to engage with humanity from integrated wholeness. That means boundaries without cruelty, truth without weaponization, perception without judgment, power without domination, clarity without contempt. The integrated empath doesn't feel superior to others. They feel responsible for how they use their gifts. They understand that with great perception comes great temptation to misuse that perception. And they choose restraint not because they're weak, but because they're strong enough to know the difference between protection and revenge. You didn't survive everything you survived just to become another version of what hurt you. You didn't develop your perceptive abilities just to use them as weapons against people operating from their own wounds. You didn't do all this inner work just to become inflated with spiritual superiority. The world doesn't need more people who use psychological insight to dominate others. It needs people who use that insight to maintain their integrity while remaining human. That's you, if you choose it, if you're ready to walk the path of integration instead of inflation, if you're willing to be powerful without being cruel, if you can hold boundaries without needing to wound people in the process. This is your era, not because you're special or chosen or more evolved than everyone else. This is your era because you've done the work to see clearly. Now the question is, will you use that clarity with wisdom or with cruelty? Comment below. Which path are you on? Integration or inflation? And be honest, because that honesty is the only thing that will save you from becoming what you spent years healing from. If you recognized yourself in the inflation patterns, that awareness is your first step back toward integration. Don't shame yourself, just choose differently going forward. Subscribe for more of Jung's teachings about the shadow work nobody wants to do, the work of recognizing when your healing becomes its own form of wounding. You're not here to be nice, you're here to be kind. There's a massive difference. Feel deeply, think clearly, choose wisely. Your power is real. How you use it determines everything.